So when I say pre-incident inspection, who hears the fire department's coming to charge you or shut you down? That's what some farmers feel. They don't know that there's no fire code at the agricultural building, so they think that we're coming with a ticket book, but we're not. But they don't know that. So part of it is getting the education to them that we want to go. So essentially, the fire department will attend your farm. This is what the message you have to get to your farm owners. You can look at the interior and exterior of the farm. Now, anybody that's got animals or anything, what are you worried about here? Interior. Contamination issues. What are we bringing? Biosecurity. Well, so you put this as number 1 and number 2. We want to come and look at the interior and exterior of your farm. Any fire department that comes to any farm, yours, they're going to walk away with more knowledge than they walked into. Now they know exactly whether your driveway is 150 feet or 200 feet. And the fire department's going to know, do we have enough 2.5 inch, do we have enough 65s to get where we got to go? Can we turn around in that driveway? Discuss animal-specific fire safety items. We responded last year to a hog operation. Firefighters went in, and it was in the early stages, so they went in the back door, part 2, walked in. Well, it had been hot enough with very little flame that they didn't have concrete slats. Now, hog operations, you got your manure pit below, they can have concrete slats that their manure drops down. He walked in, this big guy, fortunately he was carrying a pike pole. He had like an 8-foot pike pole. He went down until his arm almost pulled out. He's now in the shit pit up to his helmet. But he never let go of, and part 2, they were able to get him out. He went 6 feet. On a proper pre-incident, we would have known whether there was concrete or plastic. Is that a hazard to us? 100%. Anybody showing up. You're showing up. Is it a chicken barn? What's the difference with a chicken? Well, they could have suspended feeders. I was at the Oxford County Farm Show earlier, I guess it was last month, earlier this month. I don't even know what month. Is September? Sure, let's go with that. And a guy had a chicken barn fire, and he said the fire department, the first guy went in and he tripped because the smoke's billowing out, but they went in. But what they tripped on was his dropped feeders. He just tripped on it. Second guy tripped over him. It was like Larry Moe and Curly. Fortunately, they're only 4 feet inside the door, but they just didn't know. If you had some experience with that type of barn, you might know from the outside. Or another one, hog operations, chicken operations, large ventilating fans. If we have a fire, you want to cut that fan because really all you're doing is you're ventilating that fire. You're doing what you don't want. You're giving that additional fuel load, be in the air and the oxygen. Offer advice and suggestions, but it's going to be a two-way street. Much like this course is here, we're both going to learn from each other. The fire department's going to learn. You're going to learn even if it's one farm at a time. So just the added benefit, fire department has looked all over your property, now has a better idea what your property looks like and how to react in an emergency, depending on what it is. And water. We have, as a fire department, you have to think where you're going to get a consistent, okay, here we are in October. If I knew this was a farm, where am I getting my water supply from? Now, does that change come February when everything's frozen? 100%. Is it change in the summer when there's a drought? It's possible. I got to think of plan A, plan B, where's the water coming from? And how am I getting it here? Because you have to get a lot of tankers coming because you're running 2.5s up a laneway that could be, what do you got, 1,400 feet? And we can figure out the friction loss per hydraulic length at a certain pressure. So you got to pump a lot of water on your supply, so your supply pumper and your attack pumper for those not in the fire, attack pumper closest to the structure, and it ups the pressure from the water coming in and it sprays it off. The supply pumper is taking water from a static source and increasing the pressure and getting it to, so it's a relay system, and you could have as many depending on what you need. So water, but you have to know, because now this supply pumper, which is typically at the road or depending on as far as you can get, they're dropping tanks. So they'll drop 1,000-gallon tanks, depending on the size. Everyone's got a different one. But a truck, to have efficiency's got to just run, get water, dump it. That's their sole job. That's water sector officer will look after that. But if you've never looked at this farm, you don't know how far it is. Now, how many guys are you in the first, and I'm not critiquing anybody, but you only have a few hands on deck right off the get-go. So you got to drag 1,400 feet at 65. That's a lot of hose. Now, forget about that first off, because you have to establish incident command. You have to establish accountability. You have to have your safety officer. There's now 3 people. We haven't done anything. So now, so you have to have those 3 positions before you go. Now you got other people coming. Now they're hauling water, or they're setting stuff up, hooking stuff up, pulling this out, pulling that out. There's a lot going on, figuring out, and you need If you're going to send anybody in, you need your RIT team. Now you got to also do your 360, and we bring the water, have a better idea where to obtain it. So yeah, we talked about this. Great if somebody's at a horse show, cross country. It could be a rider falls off a horse, hits their head, could have a CB, head and neck. They could be a kilometer, but if you've never looked at the overview of that property, you would have no idea where to go. Hey, go to my farm on 11th line. She doesn't have a name for it, I'm not certain, but when you get there, please be able to respond because my daughter, my granddaughter, my sister, fallen off her horse. Horse is running loose, the rider's out there. Maybe do or don't have medics, so in the ambulance, so you have a loose horse, that's risk one, provided it hasn't ran back to the barn yet. Or stadium, jumps. Don't think of a pre-incident plan as just fire, medicals. Great for the barn that holds shows, competitions, more accountability, it decreases liability because everybody now knows the layout. So here's a question. How did everybody know to come to this room today?
Because we did yesterday.
That's right. Now, who came in the back door? Ladies, you came in the back door yesterday. Did you come in the back door today? No? Because you knew there was a back door and a front door, right? Because wouldn't the same hold true if you go to a barn? So, I'm going to have a question here in a second. Is there downfall to forwarding any show calendars or something going on to your fire department? They can kind of pre-plan. Anybody can say, oh, you know, the Cub Scouts are coming, whoever, I don't even know the different groups. 4-H is going to come into the firehouse. So you tidy things up, you prepare for it. Well, what's any different than if you know that tomorrow there's a horse show in Lincoln, your daughter's in, you know, now the show owner can say, well, the fire department knows because they have my calendar. It's just, or Stony Brook. Anybody hear how that fire happened? The latest talk was that there were because it was Victoria Day weekend, there were fireworks, maybe on the property. Let's add fireworks with a 100-plus-year-old barn that houses horses. What do you have with horses? You have feed, you have grain, you have straw, shavings, a lot of combustibles, a lot of surface area. And for the fire department, so folks here, the pre-incident plan, you want to know how long that driveway is. Rural water source, because you want to be able to set up. Structure construction type. If you have a better idea of whether it's a horse or hog, cattle, and what's above in the hay mow. Is there hay? And who's got a big old barn at all? I have one. Does it change whether you have an idea that it's completely empty versus hay versus a couple thousand pounds directly over top? You're not sending somebody on the interior. You definitely don't want the fire department to come to your farm for the first time when they're responding to your emergency. What about setting up? What if you're heading to his farm, the smoke's in your face. You can't see the structure. So where do you set up? Where do you set up rehab? Is it downwind? Is it west? Is it north? What about storage of chemicals? Some people have storage of chemicals. Chicken barns, they're gonna have that somewhere. They're gonna have fuel. These are things you wanna know. I don't wanna be sitting downwind in staging with no air on in a smoke that's coming downwind, putting me at risk. But that's just some things we could think of. So, and not putting anybody on this, but just without answering, but are we doing everything we can to keep ourselves safe and the farmers? So what's the downside? Actually, I'm gonna jump out. So what's the downside to doing a public education or training? What is the downside? Does it come down to money? Probably. Time? Yep. Okay. I just threw some numbers out here just for craps and giggles here. So a barn structure will be a full station, is that accurate to say? And mutual aid? If 30 firefighters, so how many, we'll use your place. You have a structure fire in your region, how many firefighters are gonna show up for initial suppression?
During the day, evening,
Yep.
weekend?
You take your pick, whichever, come up with a number.
Day, you're lucky to get, you might get a full pumper,
Okay.
maybe a tanker.
But then once
that's-
it starts rolling, there's gonna be other people coming, right? Once IC's able to get more tankers coming, and you call for manpower. So what are we looking, 20 or 30 on let's look at a chicken barn, 500 feet long.
Yeah.
Okay, so if they're there for 10 hours, that's 300 firefighter hours. Sounds like a lot, but your taxpayers are gonna have to pay for it. Versus if 3 firefighters went for 2 hours and did a pre-incident inspection, you've educated the farm owner and yourself, that's 6 hours. Let's do the math. 300 take away 6, 294 hours that you're saving, that your taxpayers are saving. And every dollar, now I think this is the number, but I could be wrong. If somebody's looked at the most recent, every dollar spent on prevention easily would be worth $5 saved on suppression dollars. How bad do you look if you do nothing? Terrible, right? If you try, what's the worst the farmer's going to tell you? What are you picking on me with your ticket book for? Young lady in the back corner there, from Aurora. And her partner, also from Aurora, Brad. Huh? You know what I'm saying? You're trying to help them out. There's no downside. It's a couple hours. You get a chart, even if it's not 100% accurate, you're going to have some measurements, rough measurements. Google Earth are now coming out with your measurement from your GIS, so Geographic Information System. Everybody's plotting it. Your data analytics or whoever does it in Hamilton, they're going to know your high crime rates. That's GIS. What's going to be different from farming? Nothing, but you can measure from road to driveway or whatever your system. In our case, we set up at the road with a minimum of 3 porta tanks, and we're dragging high vol to our supply. We got our supply and our attack pumper. That's how we do it every single time, and we train for rural water every single time. So we know that's how we're setting it up. Our very next municipality, they like to set up 2. And if you have a problem drafting water from 2 to 1, you got a problem. So now you have no water. Let me tell you a very real scenario. Why would you want to know the length of the driveway? And I'll keep coming back to this. There was a recent fire in the last year, and I'm not going to name the fire department. They had no idea how big the farm was. They drove, and they pull out their high vol hose. It stops here. Let's say 250 feet away. They set up at the road, and they drug out their high vol. It went out 250 feet. So what's the total so far? We got 500 feet of high vol. Laneway's 700 feet long. They weren't touching. That's a problem. So this water can't get to anywhere. So now they had to get a 3rd truck, which now, let's visualize this. There's a supply pumper in the driveway. How does that truck, so somebody's got to hump 200 feet of high vol, and if you've ever humped 100 feet of high vol, double it, because it's not easy. You got to drag it all the way, quick connect, and you're under the gun. Could that have been planned out? 100%.